In 1995, there were only 51 Kakapo parrots left in the world, a number so small that many scientists believed the extinction of this bird was only a matter of time. To save them from disappearing forever, the New Zealand government carried out an unprecedented campaign. Each of the last remaining individuals was transported by helicopter to an isolated offshore island, where the predators that had caused their population to decline severely for centuries were no longer present. But helping the Kakapo recover and rebuild its population did not stop at removing predators. In this video, let's join Mandarin Tech to explore the extraordinary story behind one of the world's most successful conservation campaigns. The Kakapo is the largest and heaviest parrot species in the world. An adult can weigh up to 4 kilograms and live for nearly 100 years. It spends almost its entire life on the ground, moving with strong legs and climbing with its beak and claws. For tens of millions of years, the Kakapo lived in an environment with almost no land-based mammalian predators. However, everything began to change when humans and many invasive mammals arrived in New Zealand. When sensing danger, Kakapo parrots move slowly or freeze completely. In addition, the Kakapo has a distinctive scent that helps it recognize and communicate with others of its kind. But against predators with a highly sensitive sense of smell, this scent accidentally became a trail marker, making the birds easier targets to detect. As a result, Kakapo numbers declined rapidly across New Zealand. The forests that once echoed with the calls of thousands of individuals gradually fell silent. By the mid-20th century, the Kakapo population had dropped to an alarming level, and many scientists even believed that the species had gone completely extinct. As the number of Kakapo declined rapidly, the problem was no longer limited to the risk of a rare bird species disappearing. Behind it were a series of quiet impacts on New Zealand's entire forest ecosystem. As a plant-eating species, the Kakapo takes part in the seed dispersal process of many native plants. Studies tracking bird droppings and feeding behavior show that they can carry seeds hundreds of meters away. This helps reduce competition for nutrients and increases the germination rate of many native plant species. Ecological studies show that when these parrots disappear, the seed dispersal rate of some tree species can drop by 30% to 60%. Causing young plants to become more concentrated around the parent tree and significantly reducing their survival rate. Changes in plant composition do not only alter the appearance of the forest, they also create a chain effect across the entire ecosystem, significantly affecting food sources, breeding sites, and shelter areas for many species that depend on native vegetation. In other words, the decline of the Kakapo is not just the loss of a single bird species, but the weakening of a component that has helped maintain the operation of New Zealand's ecosystem for millions of years. For the Maori people, the Kakapo is an important part of New Zealand's native heritage. It appears in many folk stories and is considered one of the most unique creatures of this island nation. After many years of monitoring the decline of the Kakapo, conservationists realized that traditional measures were no longer effective. Therefore, New Zealand decided to move all remaining individuals to a safer and more strictly controlled area. To carry out this plan, experts evaluated many different locations and chose Codfish Island as the resettlement site for the Kakapo. The island is isolated off the coast of New Zealand, which helps greatly reduce the risk of predators entering the area. In addition, the island's ecosystem was still relatively well preserved, providing abundant natural food sources and a suitable habitat for this special bird. Concentrating the entire population in one controlled area also made research and monitoring much easier. The process was designed with the highest level of caution. First, expert teams surveyed the areas where Kakapo were still recorded. Each individual was located, given a health check, and had its genetic information recorded before relocation. The goal was not only to save the birds that were still alive, but also to maintain as much genetic diversity as possible for future generations. Each Kakapo was carefully searched for, captured, and transported by helicopter to Codfish Island. The island is strictly managed and is not open to visitors. Its ecosystem is continuously monitored to ensure that there are no signs of invasive species entering the area.
The goal was to recreate an environment close to the natural conditions in which the Kakapo had evolved for millions of years. By completely removing the impact of predators, the survival rate of adult birds improved significantly.
At first, scientists believed that Kakapo simply needed enough food to reproduce. Therefore, in the early years of the conservation program, they focused on providing supplementary artificial food, hoping to improve the breeding rate of this rare bird. When nutrition became more abundant, female Kakapo would have enough energy to produce eggs, raise chicks, and maintain the population. However, reality did not unfold as expected. Although they were carefully cared for and given extra food, the number of breeding nests remained very low for many consecutive years. This pushed scientists to carry out a series of long-term studies. They monitored Kakapo behavior across many breeding seasons, analyzed their diet, environmental conditions, and related biological factors. After years of collecting data, an important discovery emerged. They realized that Kakapo do not decide to breed based on the overall amount of food available. Instead, they are waiting for a signal from nature. That signal is the Rimu tree. This ancient tree species can live for hundreds of years and only produces large fruiting seasons every 2 to 6 years. Whenever the Rimu enters a strong fruiting season, Kakapo almost simultaneously begin their breeding activity. In-depth analyses showed that Rimu fruit contains especially high levels of nutrients, particularly calcium and vitamin D3. These nutrients play an important role in egg formation, embryo development, and chick growth. For female Kakapo, the Rimu fruiting season is not simply an abundant food source, but also a reliable biological signal that the environment is in the most favorable condition for reproduction. The practical value of this discovery was extremely significant. Instead of applying broad support measures, conservationists could predict in advance the years when Kakapo were likely to breed successfully based on the fruiting cycle of the Rimu tree. As a result, resources could be allocated more effectively. Monitoring work could be prepared more carefully, and the success rate of protecting chicks was also greatly improved. Decoding the connection between the Kakapo and the Rimu tree helped scientists better understand when this bird species reproduces. However, a new problem quickly appeared. In 2002, the Rimu trees entered an especially large fruiting season on Codfish Island. This was the opportunity that conservationists had been waiting for many years. Wanting to make the most of this rare period, they increased supplementary feeding for female individuals in order to improve their physical condition before the breeding season. The number of chicks increased clearly, but when experts checked their sex, they discovered a worrying result. More than 70% of the chicks born were male. This immediately created a major risk for the future of the population. Researchers began looking for the cause. In Kakapo, males are 30% to 40% larger than females. When the body senses that the environment has an abundant food supply, it tends to produce more males. In nature, this helps maximize the competitive ability of the next generation. At this point, instead of feeding them more, conservationists began reducing the food portions. The goal was to keep the birds in good enough condition to reproduce, but not allow the mother birds to build up too much stored energy. After that, the sex ratio gradually returned to a balanced state, close to 50-50. It was one of the rare cases in conservation history where the solution to a reproductive problem came from reducing food instead of adding more. As the number of Kakapo began to increase again, the entire population at that time still maintained only a few dozen different genetic lines. If a young bird was lost, the conservation program could also lose an important part of the species' gene pool. This pushed scientists to apply the most modern technologies to conservation work. One of the most unique solutions was the use of fake eggs made with 3D printing technology. When a female Kakapo laid an egg, rangers would carefully take the real egg to an artificial incubation center. In its place, they would put a simulated egg with a size, weight, and shape almost identical to the original. Inside the egg, tiny sound devices were also integrated. When the hatching time came closer, they could play the calls of a chick in order to maintain the mother bird's natural care response. Because they did not have to spend many weeks incubating the first egg,
many females recovered their physical condition faster than usual. In years when the Rimu trees produced an especially large amount of fruit, some individuals could even lay a second clutch. According to the New Zealand Department of Conservation, the 2018-2019 breeding season recorded 252 eggs laid by 86 females, of which 72 chicks survived to the early juvenile stage. This was the highest number of chicks ever recorded in a single breeding season since the recovery program began in the 1990s, helping the total population increase from 147 individuals at the beginning of 2019 to more than 200 individuals within the same year.
Just as the conservation program was achieving promising results, a new crisis suddenly appeared. In 2019, aspergillosis broke out on Codfish Island, where most of the Kakapo population lived. This is a fungal infection caused by spores in the environment and usually affects the respiratory system of birds. Under normal conditions, many bird species can withstand this type of fungus. However, for the Kakapo, a species with an extremely limited population and low genetic diversity, the risk was much greater. Within a short time, dozens of Kakapo individuals were confirmed to be infected. For a species with only a few hundred individuals in the entire world, this was considered a national-level emergency. Immediately after the disease was detected, conservationists activated an emergency response process. First, health monitoring across the entire population was intensified in order to detect early signs of abnormality. Individuals suspected of being infected were given medical examinations and tested to determine the level of impact. Alongside treatment efforts, experts and conservation teams worked together to investigate the source of the outbreak, assess the level of spread, and carry out measures to reduce risks. This was considered one of the largest wildlife health campaigns ever carried out in New Zealand, mobilizing resources from many different scientific and conservation organizations. This crisis brought an important lesson. It showed that conservation does not stop at protecting habitats or removing predators. When a population is too small, the risk from disease can also become a serious threat to the survival of the entire species. At the same time, this event helped scientists improve health monitoring procedures, strengthen emergency response capacity, and build more effective prevention plans for the future. Thanks to the combination of scientific research, modern technology, and field management, consecutive successful breeding seasons have helped the number of Kakapo increase steadily year by year. From 51 individuals in 1995, the Kakapo population has now increased to around 247 individuals. The number of females of breeding age has also risen significantly, creating an important foundation for the species' long-term development. The meaning of this project does not only lie in saving a rare bird species. The Kakapo has become a symbol of nature's ability to recover when it receives the right support from humans. The lessons accumulated throughout the process of monitoring, caring for, and restoring the Kakapo population have become an important reference for many conservation programs around the world. Instead of only focusing on protecting habitats, modern programs are increasingly paying attention to deeply understanding the biological mechanisms, breeding behavior, and genetic structure of each species. The success of the Kakapo shows that even species standing on the edge of extinction can still recover if they are protected with the right strategy, suitable resources, and long-term persistence. Today, the Kakapo is no longer just a bird saved from the risk of disappearing. It has become a living example of the power of science, technology, and long-term cooperation between researchers, conservation teams, and local communities in the effort to preserve the planet's biodiversity. The Kakapo is not the only bird species in New Zealand that has stood on the edge of disappearing. A similar story also happened with the takahe, a flightless bird with bright blue and green feathers, considered one of the special natural symbols of this island nation. After many decades with no signs of its existence in the wild, the takahe was once declared extinct by scientists at the end of the 19th century. In 1948, an expedition unexpectedly discovered a small population of nearly 500 individuals still living in a remote mountain area of Fiordland. But their numbers gradually declined due to the impact of predatory animals,
and by 1981, only 118 individuals remained alive. Like the Kakapo, conservationists also applied similar measures, moving the surviving birds to isolated islands, controlling breeding, and monitoring each individual with tracking devices. After more than 7 decades of persistence, the Takahe population has now increased to more than 500 individuals. Although it is still classified as endangered, this bird is gradually returning to areas where it had been absent for many decades. This is the result of a conservation strategy built on scientific foundations, long-term investment, and New Zealand's determination to restore its native species. The experience accumulated from the Takahe, the Kakapo, and many other bird species has helped make this country one of the world's leading models for biodiversity conservation.
The journey of the Kakapo is not only the story of a rare parrot species being saved from the risk of extinction. It is living proof that even losses in nature that seem impossible to repair can still be restored when humans act with persistence and understand the natural world. The story of the Kakapo is therefore not only New Zealand's own success, but also a source of inspiration for conservation programs around the world about the remarkable ability of nature to recover. If you find this extraordinary journey interesting, please like and subscribe to Mandarin Tech to discover more fascinating stories about science, nature, and conservation efforts around the world.